Kevin's fingers tapped rhythmically across the touch screen, his brow furrowed in concentration. The newest smartphone gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights of Gadget World, the electronics store where he'd worked since dropping out of college. A customer cleared their throat, snapping him back to reality. "Sorry, just finishing up the setup," Kevin mumbled, handing over the device. "You're all set." The customer nodded curtly and left without a word. Kevin sighed, running a hand through his messy brown hair. Just another thrilling day in retail paradise. His coworker, Tom, sidled up to him. "Dude, you look like you had a rough night." Kevin shrugged. "Just the usual Netflix binge, maybe one too many beers." Tom snorted. "Living the dream? Huh? You need to get out more, man. There's a whole universe out there." Yeah, Kevin waved him off. "I'll pencil in exploring the cosmos right after my shift." The familiar chime of the store's phone interrupted their banter. Kevin reached for it, grateful for the distraction. "Gadget World, this is Kevin. How can I help you?" A crisp, formal voice responded. "Is this Kevin Andrews?" Yes." Kevin's eyebrows knitted together. "Who's asking?" "This is Maxwell Winters, attorney at law. I'm calling regarding the estate of your grandfather, Arthur Andrews." Kevin's stomach dropped. Grandpa Arthur, the eccentric old man he'd met maybe twice in his life. I didn't even know he'd passed," Kevin stammered. "My condolences," the lawyer replied, though his tone remained businesslike. "Your grandfather left explicit instructions for you in his will. It's imperative we meet as soon as possible. How quickly can you come to my office?" Kevin's mind reeled. He glanced at Tom, who was pretending not to eavesdrop. "I'm working right now, but I could come after my shift, around 6? That will suffice. My office is at 1701 Starling Avenue. Don't be late, Mr. Andrews. There's much to discuss." The line went dead, leaving Kevin staring at the phone, his world tilted on its axis. Tom raised an eyebrow. "Everything okay, man?" Kevin shook his head. "I honestly have no idea." The law office of Winters and Associates loomed before Kevin, all gleaming glass and sleek metal. He tugged at his wrinkled shirt, suddenly acutely aware of how out of place he looked. A receptionist with perfectly coiffed hair eyed him suspiciously. "Can I help you?" "Kevin Andrews, here to see Mr. Winters." Her eyes widened slightly. "Of course, Mr. Andrews. Right this way." She led him down a corridor lined with expensive-looking artwork. Kevin's palms began to sweat. What the hell was going on? Maxwell Winters stood as Kevin entered, extending a hand. "Mr. Andrews, thank you for coming on such short notice." Kevin shook his hand, noting the lawyer's impeccable suit and stern demeanor. "No problem, though I'm still not sure why I'm here." Winters gestured for him to sit. "Your grandfather, Arthur Andrews, was a unique individual. His last will and testament reflects that." Kevin shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I barely knew the guy. If this is about some family heirloom or whatever, you can probably find a better." "Mr. Andrews," Winters cut him off, "your grandfather has left you his entire estate." The words hung in the air. Kevin blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" Winters slid a folder across the desk. "The full details are here, but in short, you've inherited a substantial fortune, multiple properties across several countries, and various business interests." Kevin's head spun. "This has to be a mistake. I'm just some guy who works at an electronics store. I can barely afford ramen most weeks." "I assure you, there's no mistake." Winters leaned forward. "However, there are conditions to your inheritance." Of course there were. Kevin's shoulders slumped. "What kind of conditions?" Winters hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Your grandfather was involved in some specialized trade. Interplanetary commerce, to be precise." Kevin barked out a laugh. "Right, and I'm the king of Mars." The lawyer's expression remained deadly serious. "Mr. Andrews, I understand this is difficult to process, but I assure you, everything I'm telling you is true. Your grandfather was a pioneer in establishing trade relations with extraterrestrial civilizations."
Extraterrestrial?
"You mean aliens?" Kevin's voice cracked. "You expect me to believe my grandpa was some kind of space merchant?" Winters nodded solemnly. "Not only that, but he maintained a residence on a planet called Elyos 7. It's there that you must go to fully claim your inheritance. Kevin stood abruptly, his chair screeching against the floor. This is insane. I'm out of here. There's one more thing, Winters called as Kevin reached for the door. Your grandfather was married. His widow. She's part of your inheritance as well? Kevin froze, his hand on the doorknob. He turned slowly, meeting Winters' gaze. What the hell does that mean? Winters sighed. It means, Mr. Andrews, that you've inherited not just wealth and property, but a wife, an alien wife. Kevin's legs gave out, and he slumped against the door, sliding to the floor. This can't be happening. I assure you, it is. Winter's voice softened slightly. I know this is overwhelming, but there's more at stake here than you realize. Your grandfather's work was vital to maintaining peace between Earth and several alien civilizations. If you refuse this inheritance, it could have dire consequences. Kevin looked up, his world crumbling around him. So what? I'm just supposed to pack my bags and jet off to some alien planet and become an intergalactic sugar daddy? Winters actually cracked a smile at that. Not quite, but you do need to go to Elyos 7, meet your wife, and decide how to proceed. A ship has been arranged to take you there in 3 days' time. Kevin's mind raced. This was madness, complete and utter insanity. And yet, a small part of him, the part that had always dreamed of adventure, of escaping his mundane existence, stirred to life. What if I say no? He asked quietly. Winter's expression grew grave. Then the delicate balance your grandfather worked so hard to maintain could collapse. Earth could lose valuable allies, and you, well, let's just say there are parties who would be very interested in acquiring what you've inherited by any means necessary. Kevin closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and made a decision that would change his life forever. When do we leave? The next few days passed in a blur. Kevin quit his job, much to Tom's bewilderment, packed a bag with essentials, and tried not to have a complete mental breakdown. Before he knew it, he found himself aboard a sleek spacecraft that looked nothing like the clunky shuttles he'd seen in old NASA footage. A stern-faced woman in a crisp uniform approached him. Mr. Andrews, I'm Captain Zara. Welcome aboard the Stargazer. Kevin nodded dumbly, still half convinced this was all some elaborate prank. How long until we reach, Elyos 7? Captain Zara raised an eyebrow. About 36 hours, give or take. I suggest you get some rest. The first jump can be disorienting. As if on cue, a low hum filled the ship. Kevin's stomach lurched as the stars outside the view screen blurred into streaks of light. He barely made it to the nearest restroom before emptying the contents of his stomach. Some intergalactic traitor he was turning out to be. Kevin's first glimpse of Elyos 7 took his breath away. The planet shimmered like a massive sapphire, swirling patterns of blue and white dancing across its surface. As they descended through the atmosphere, he pressed his face against the view screen, drinking in the alien landscape. Towering spires of crystalline material stretched towards the sky, interconnected by graceful arches that seemed to defy gravity. Vehicles that looked like liquid metal zipped between the structures, following invisible pathways. And everywhere he looked, there were people with blue skin. The ship touched down on a landing pad jutting out from an ornate building that put Earth's grandest palaces to shame. Kevin's legs shook as he made his way down the ramp, the gravity slightly lighter than he was used to. A small group awaited him at the bottom. In the center stood a woman. No, an alien woman, who made Kevin's heart skip a beat. Her skin was a deep, rich blue that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. Delicate patterns swirled across her bare arms and face, almost like bioluminescent tattoos. Her eyes, a startling silver, regarded him coolly. This had to be Vaya, his wife. Kevin stumbled forward, nearly tripping over his own feet. Hi, I'm Kevin. You must be Vaya. Vaya Savar, she interrupted, her voice musical yet clipped. Though I suppose you may call me Vaya. Kevin extended a hand, then quickly withdrew it, unsure of the proper etiquette. It's, nice to meet you. Vaya's expression remained impassive. Is it? I find that hard to believe, given the circumstances. One of the other aliens, An older male with elaborate facial markings stepped forward. "Welcome to Elyos Seven, Mr. Andrews. I am Valor Savar, Vaya's father." Kevin nodded, trying to ignore the lump in his throat. "Thank you. I appreciate the welcome, but I've got to be honest, I'm still not entirely sure what's going on." Valor exchanged a glance with Vaya before responding. "Your grandfather, Arthur Andrews, was a trusted ally of our people. His trade routes ensured peace and prosperity between Elyos Seven and Earth. With his passing, those responsibilities now fall to you." Kevin ran a hand through his hair. "I'm just a guy from Ohio. I don't know the first thing about trade or diplomacy, let alone dealing with aliens." Vaya finally spoke up. "Then perhaps you should listen and learn, rather than assuming you know nothing." Her words stung, but she wasn't wrong. Kevin took a deep breath. "Okay, I'm here, and I'm willing to learn. What do I need to do?" Valor smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "First, you must understand the nature of our alliance and the expectations that come with it. But before that, there's a ceremony that must take place to formalize your inheritance." Vaya stepped closer, her gaze piercing. "You must prove yourself worthy of the legacy you've inherited. Fail, and you will not only lose everything, but you may also cost us the alliance my father and your grandfather worked so hard to build." Kevin swallowed hard. No pressure, right? As they led him into the grand building, Kevin realized he was standing on the precipice of an unimaginable new life. The road ahead was uncertain, and the stakes were higher than he could have ever dreamed. But for the first time in a long while, he felt a flicker of something more than just fear or confusion. He felt the stirrings of purpose. And maybe, just maybe, he was ready to embrace it. Kevin's heart pounded in his chest as he followed Vaya and Valor through the grand hallways of the palace. The crystalline walls glimmered with an ethereal light, casting shimmering patterns on the polished floors. Everything about this place felt surreal, like stepping into a dream or a nightmare. He still wasn't sure which. Vaya walked beside him, her every movement graceful, yet purposeful. She seemed to glide across the floor, her long, flowing robes trailing behind her like water. Kevin sneaked a glance at her, trying to read her expression, but her face remained an unreadable mask. He couldn't shake the feeling that she was sizing him up, judging him. "Where are we going?" Kevin finally asked, his voice echoing slightly in the vast corridor. Vaya didn't turn to look at him as she replied, "To the Hall of Elemental Harmony. It is where the rite of succession will take place." "The what now?" Kevin's stomach churned with nerves. Valor, walking ahead of them, answered without slowing his pace. "The rite of succession is an ancient ceremony on Elyos Seven. It symbolizes the transfer of responsibilities and powers from one leader to another. As Arthur's heir, you must undergo this ritual to solidify your position and officially claim your inheritance." Kevin swallowed hard. "And what exactly does this ritual involve?" Vaya's lips twitched, almost forming a smile, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "You will be tested," she said simply. "That's vague," Kevin muttered, earning himself a sharp glance from Vaya. "Trust in the process," Valor said, his tone leaving little room for argument. They reached a set of massive double doors, carved from a material Kevin couldn't identify. Strange symbols, glowing faintly, were etched into the surface. Valor placed his hand on the door, and the symbols flared to life, pulsing with energy. With a low groan, the doors swung open. Beyond them lay a vast chamber, unlike anything Kevin had ever seen. The ceiling soared high above, disappearing into shadows. In the center of the room was a circular platform, suspended over a chasm filled with swirling, luminescent mist. For massive pillars stood around the platform, each one crackling with elemental energy: fire, water, earth, and air. Vaya stepped onto the platform first, her movements precise and confident. Kevin hesitated, glancing down at the misty void below. He couldn't see the bottom. Taking a deep breath, he forced himself to step onto the platform, feeling a slight tingle as his feet made contact with the smooth surface. Valor followed, and as soon as he joined them, the doors behind them closed with a resounding thud. Kevin's pulse quickened. There was no turning back now. Valor raised his arms, and the elemental energies surged in response, growing brighter and more intense. Kevin Andrews, you stand before the elements of Elyos to prove your worth as the heir of Arthur Andrews. The rite of succession will test your spirit, your resolve, and your connection to the elements that bind our world. Should you succeed, you will be granted the full power and responsibility that comes with your inheritance. Should you fail? Kevin winced. I'm guessing failure isn't an option? Vaya stepped forward, her silver eyes locking onto his. Failure is not only possible, but it would also be catastrophic. For you and for us. Valor began to chant in a language Kevin couldn't understand. The air around them grew heavy with energy, the elements swirling faster, more violently. Kevin's skin prickled as the temperature fluctuated. One moment icy cold, the next searing hot. The platform beneath his feet hummed with power. Focus, Vaya whispered, her voice cutting through the chaos. You must align yourself with the elements. Feel them, connect with them. Kevin clenched his fists, trying to concentrate, but his mind was racing. How was he supposed to connect with elements? He was just a regular guy. This was way beyond anything he'd ever experienced. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and tried to calm the storm inside him. Suddenly, he felt a sharp jolt, like an electric shock running through his body. His eyes snapped open, and he gasped. The flames from the fire pillar had leapt towards him, wrapping around his arm like a burning snake. But instead of pain, he felt warmth, a strange, comforting heat that seeped into his bones. Instinctively, Kevin raised his other hand, and the water pillar responded, sending a stream of liquid that coiled around his wrist. The coolness of the water contrasted with the fire, yet somehow, the two elements didn't clash. They balanced each other, creating a harmonious sensation that spread through his body. The air around him swirled, lifting his hair and clothes in a gentle breeze, while the earth beneath his feet rumbled, sending vibrations up through his legs. Kevin could feel the connection, the raw power of the elements coursing through him. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. Vaya's voice broke through the overwhelming sensations. Good. Now, focus. Let the elements guide you. Kevin closed his eyes again, this time not out of fear, but to better attune himself to the energies surrounding him. He could feel the fire's passion, the water's calm, the earth's strength, and the air's freedom. They pulsed within him, each element distinct yet part of a greater whole. As he concentrated, the elements began to merge, intertwining with one another until they were no longer separate forces, but a single, unified energy. Kevin felt his mind expand, his senses heighten. He could feel the life force of Elyos Seven itself, a vibrant, pulsating presence that resonated with the elements. A sudden burst of light forced Kevin's eyes open. The pillars of elemental energy had merged into a single beam of brilliant white light, shooting up from the platform and into the abyss above. The light enveloped Kevin, filling him with warmth and power. He felt invincible, as if nothing in the universe could harm him. Valor's voice boomed, filled with authority. The rite of succession is complete. Kevin Andrews, you are now the rightful heir to Arthur Andrews' legacy. The elements have accepted you. The light began to fade, and Kevin slowly returned to himself, the overwhelming power subsiding to a more manageable level. He felt different, stronger, more aware. But there was also a weight, a responsibility that now rested on his shoulders. Vaya studied him, her expression softening ever so slightly. You did well, Kevin. Thanks, Kevin managed, still trying to process everything that had just happened. So, that's it? I'm connected to the elements now? More than connected, Valor said, stepping forward. You are now their guardian, their steward. It is a great honor, but also a great burden. You must use this power wisely. Kevin nodded slowly. I understand. I think. Vaya approached him, her gaze penetrating. There is much you still don't know, Kevin. This is only the beginning. But for now, you have proven yourself worthy. The rest will come in time. As the platform descended back to the ground, Kevin's thoughts were a whirl of questions. What exactly had his grandfather been involved in? What kind of responsibilities would he have to take on now? And most importantly, What role did Via play in all of this? One thing was certain. His life would never be the same again. Kevin woke to the sound of unfamiliar birdsong, a soft melody that seemed to drift in from the open window of his opulent suite. For a brief, blissful moment, he forgot where he was, but the events of the past few days quickly came crashing back into his consciousness. The rite of succession, his newfound connection to the elements, and the daunting responsibility that now hung over him like a storm cloud. Sitting up in the massive bed, Kevin ran a hand through his hair, still feeling out of place in this strange world. His gaze drifted to the window, where the alien city of Elyos Seven stretched out before him in all its otherworldly glory. Towers of crystalline structures glinted in the sunlight, interconnected by delicate bridges that defied gravity. Hovering vehicles zipped through the air, moving with a fluidity that seemed more like swimming than flying. The sight was both breathtaking and overwhelming. A soft knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Kevin frowned, unsure who it could be. "Come in," he called, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. The door slid open to reveal a tall, slender man with deep green skin and golden eyes. He wore robes of deep emerald that shimmered with a faint glow, similar to the ones Via and Valor wore, though his were far more elaborate. He bowed slightly, a formal gesture that made Kevin feel even more out of place. "Good morning, Mr. Andrews," the man said, his voice smooth and cultured. "I am Eric's advisor to the matriarch. I have been sent to assist you in your transition here on Elyos 7. Thanks," Kevin replied, trying to match the man's formal tone. "But what exactly does that mean?" Eric smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "It means that I am here to help you understand our customs, our technology, and, of course, your new responsibilities. There is much you need to learn if you are to fulfill your grandfather's legacy." Kevin stood, feeling the weight of those words. "Yeah, I figured. So, what's first on the agenda?" Eric's gestured towards a small table by the window, where a tray of exotic-looking food had been set out. "First, I would recommend breakfast. The matriarch has requested your presence in the council chamber later this morning, but until then, I am at your disposal." Kevin's stomach growled, reminding him that he hadn't eaten since yesterday. He crossed the room and sat down, eyeing the food with curiosity. There were fruits and pastries, though none that he recognized, and a steaming cup of something that smelled like a mix between coffee and spices. He picked up a small, round fruit that was a vibrant shade of purple and took a cautious bite. The flavor exploded in his mouth, sweet and tangy with a hint of something floral. "This is amazing," he said around a mouthful. Eric's inclined his head. "I'm glad it pleases you. The fruits of Elyos 7 are known for their unique flavors." As Kevin ate, Eric's began to explain some of the basics of Elyos 7 society. He spoke of the planet's history, the different species that lived there, and the intricate web of trade agreements that Arthur Andrews had helped establish. Kevin listened, trying to absorb as much as he could, but it was a lot to take in. "Your grandfather was a remarkable man," Eric said, his tone taking on a more reverent note. "He saw the potential for cooperation between our worlds long before anyone else did. His efforts brought prosperity and peace to Elyos 7 and Earth alike." Kevin swallowed another bite of fruit, feeling a pang of guilt. "I wish I'd known him better," he admitted. "He was always this mysterious figure in my life. Now I'm supposed to follow in his footsteps, and I have no idea where to start." Eric's expression softened slightly. "You are not alone in this, Mr. Andrews. There are many here who will help you, myself included. But there is something you should know, something that was kept hidden, even from your grandfather." Kevin's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" Eric's hesitated, glancing towards the door as if to make sure they were alone. "The matriarch has decided that you should be informed, given the unique circumstances. There is a darker side to the trade agreements your grandfather established." Kevin leaned forward, his breakfast forgotten. "Darker side? What are you talking about?" Eric's lowered his voice. "Not all of the alien civilizations we deal with are peaceful. Some are more dangerous. They operate in the shadows, using the trade routes to move illegal goods, items that could destabilize entire worlds if they fell into the wrong hands." Kevin's mind raced. "And my grandfather knew about this?" No, Eric said quickly. Arthur Andrews was kept in the dark about these activities. He was a symbol of legitimacy and peace, and it was decided that he should remain unaware of the darker dealings. But now, with his passing, certain elements within Elyos Seven see an opportunity. They believe that you, as his successor, can be manipulated. Kevin felt a chill run down his spine. Manipulated? How? Eric's leaned closer, his golden eyes intense. There are factions that wish to use you to further their own agendas. They may approach you with offers of alliances or deals that seem beneficial, but their true intentions are far more sinister. You must be careful, Mr. Andrews. Trust no one completely, not even me. Kevin sat back, his thoughts spinning. He had barely gotten a handle on the idea of inheriting his grandfather's wealth and responsibilities, and now he was being told that there were hidden enemies, people who wanted to use him for their own gain. What am I supposed to do? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Eric's expression was grim. Learn quickly. Observe everything. And when the time comes, be ready to act. Your grandfather was a man of peace, but you may need to be a man of action. The balance between our worlds is delicate, and one wrong move could bring it all crashing down. Kevin stared at the table, the weight of Eric's words pressing down on him. He had been thrust into a game he didn't understand, with stakes that were higher than he could have ever imagined. Before he could respond, there was another knock at the door, this one more urgent. Eric stood, his expression shifting back to its polite mask. It seems our time is up. The matriarch awaits you. Kevin nodded numbly, rising to his feet. As he followed Eric's out of the suite and through the palace corridors, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into a den of vipers, where every move he made could be his last. The council chamber was a grand room, with high ceilings and walls lined with intricate tapestries depicting scenes of Elyos Seven's history. A long table dominated the center of the room, surrounded by high-backed chairs. The matriarch sat at the head, her midnight blue skin and silver markings giving her an otherworldly beauty. Kevin Andrews, she said as he entered, her voice as calm and commanding as ever. Please sit. Kevin took a seat near the end of the table, feeling the eyes of the council members on him. Vaya was there as well, her expression unreadable. Valor stood beside the matriarch, his gaze steady. We have much to discuss, the matriarch began, her eyes locking onto Kevin's. You have completed the rite of succession, and with it, you have inherited both your grandfather's legacy and the responsibilities that come with it. But there are challenges ahead, challenges that will test your resolve and your judgment. Kevin nodded, his mind still reeling from Eric's revelation. I'm ready to do whatever it takes, he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. The matriarch's gaze softened slightly. I believe you, Kevin, but there is something you must understand. The peace your grandfather worked so hard to achieve is fragile. There are those who would see it broken, who would exploit the connections between our worlds for their own gain. She paused, letting her words sink in. Kevin felt a knot tighten in his stomach. There is one such individual, the matriarch continued, a powerful figure within our society who has been working in the shadows to destabilize the trade agreements. We have reason to believe that he will try to approach you, to bring you into his fold. Kevin's heart skipped a beat. Who is he? The matriarch's expression darkened. His name is Serac, one of the most influential and dangerous beings on Elyos Seven. He controls vast resources and has ties to some of the most ruthless factions in the galaxy. If he succeeds in recruiting you, it could tip the balance of power in his favor. Kevin swallowed hard. And what do you want me to do? You must tread carefully, the matriarch said. If Serac approaches you, you are to engage with him, learn what you can, but do not commit to anything. We need time to gather more information, to uncover his true intentions. In the meantime, you will be closely monitored. Kevin nodded, though his mind was spinning. He was being asked to play a dangerous game, one where the stakes were life and death, not just for him, but for countless others. Kevin's days on Elyos Seven passed in a whirlwind of preparation and observation. The grandeur of the palace was overwhelming, but the reality of his responsibilities quickly set in. With Eric's guidance, he delved into the intricacies of Elyos Seven's politics and trade agreements. Every meeting, Every conversation was a potential minefield. Vaya and Valor remained at his side, offering assistance and occasionally dropping cryptic comments that only deepened his sense of unease. Despite their seeming support, Kevin couldn't shake the feeling that their true loyalties were ambiguous. He often wondered if they, too, might be part of the intricate web of deception he was trying to untangle. 3 days after the council meeting, Kevin received an unexpected visitor. A sleek, black hovercraft landed at the palace's private docking bay, its arrival shrouded in secrecy. Erix approached him with an unreadable expression. "Mr. Andrews," Erix said, his voice low and serious. "It appears Serac has taken an interest in you sooner than anticipated. He has requested a private meeting." Kevin's stomach churned. "Do we have any information on what he wants?" Erix's gaze was steady. "Not much, but given his reputation, we can assume he will attempt to sway you to his side. Remember, your primary objective is to gather information without committing to any agreements." Kevin nodded, though he was uncertain how he would handle the meeting. He had been briefed on Serac's influence and ruthlessness, and the thought of facing him was daunting. The meeting was set for the evening. Kevin dressed in the formal attire provided by Elyos Seven, a shimmering tunic and trousers that felt alien but somehow appropriate for the occasion. Erix accompanied him to the venue, a luxurious, high-rise tower that overlooked the bustling city below. As they entered the reception area, Kevin's eyes fell on a man who epitomized power and charisma. Serac was tall, with a commanding presence and sharp features. His eyes were dark, almost obsidian, and his skin a deep, metallic shade that seemed to absorb the light. He was surrounded by an entourage of guards and advisors, each one exuding a sense of menace. Serac greeted Kevin with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Kevin Andrews," he said, extending a hand. "I'm pleased you could join me." Kevin took his hand, noting the firm grip and the coldness beneath the surface. "Thank you for the invitation, Serac." Serac gestured for Kevin to sit at a round table set with an array of delicacies and drinks. "Please, make yourself comfortable. I believe we have much to discuss." As they sat, Serac's gaze remained fixed on Kevin. "You have inherited quite a legacy from your grandfather. I'm sure you're aware of the opportunities this presents." Kevin met Serac's gaze steadily. "I'm still learning about all that entails. What is it that you wish to discuss?" Serac's smile widened, revealing a hint of sharp teeth. "I believe there is mutual benefit in forging an alliance. I have resources and influence that could aid you in your role here, and in return, I would expect support in certain ventures that I am involved in." Kevin's mind raced. He knew this was the moment he had to be careful. He needed to extract as much information as he could without revealing his hand. "What kind of ventures are we talking about?" Serac leaned forward, his tone becoming more confidential. "There are many areas where our interests align: trade routes, security, and influence. But, more than that, I believe you have a unique position to bridge gaps between various factions. Your grandfather understood this, and so do I." Kevin's thoughts were spinning. He had to keep up the pretense while he gathered information. "And what exactly do you need from me?" Serac's eyes narrowed slightly. "Your support in key negotiations and decisions. In exchange, I can offer you insight into certain, hidden aspects of the trade agreements. Knowledge that could be invaluable in maintaining your position." The conversation continued for another hour, with Serac making his pitch and Kevin carefully deflecting any direct commitments. By the time the meeting concluded, Kevin felt mentally exhausted but somewhat relieved. He had managed to gather a few pieces of crucial information while keeping Serac's true intentions ambiguous. As Kevin returned to the palace, Erix awaited him with a stern look. "How did it go?" "Serac was as smooth as I expected," Kevin replied. "He offered me insight and resources, but I didn't commit to anything. I think he's trying to test my loyalty." Erix nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Good work. It's crucial that you maintain your neutrality while we continue to investigate Serac's true motives. There are still many unknowns." The next morning, Kevin was summoned once more to the council chamber. The matriarch and the council members were waiting, their expressions grave. "We have received troubling news," the matriarch began. "Serac's influence is stronger than anticipated. He has begun to undermine some of our agreements covertly, and there are fears he might be planning something significant. Kevin's heart sank. What do you need me to do? The matriarch's gaze was unwavering. We need you to continue as you have been, gathering information, maintaining your stance, and being vigilant. But we also need you to prepare for potential escalation. Serac may make a more aggressive move soon, and when he does, you must be ready. Kevin nodded, feeling the weight of his role more heavily than ever. He had entered a world of political intrigue and dangerous alliances, with the fate of his grandfather's legacy hanging in the balance. The following days were a blur of meetings and preparations. Kevin worked closely with Erix, Vaya, and Valor, trying to piece together the puzzle of Serac's plans while managing the intricate dynamics of Elyos Seven's politics. One evening, as Kevin walked through the palace gardens, he was approached by Vaya. Her demeanor was more open than usual. "There's something you should know," she said quietly. "I've been investigating Serac's activities. He's planning something that could disrupt the entire trade network, and he's targeting key allies." Kevin's eyes widened. "What can we do?" Vaya's expression was serious. "We need to act before it's too late. We have to expose Serac's plans and rally the support of those who are still loyal to the original agreements. It's a delicate operation, but it's necessary." Kevin felt a surge of determination. "I'll do whatever it takes." The plan was set into motion. Kevin, Vaya, and Erix worked tirelessly to gather evidence against Serac and to secure the support of key allies. The process was fraught with danger and deception, but Kevin's resolve never wavered. Finally, the day of reckoning arrived. Kevin, supported by Vaya and Erix, presented the evidence against Serac to the council. The chamber was filled with tension as the accusations were laid bare. Serac's attempts to manipulate the trade network were exposed, and his influence began to crumble. In the end, Serac was stripped of his power and influence. The trade agreements were reaffirmed, and the balance between the worlds was restored. Kevin had managed to navigate the treacherous waters of Elyos Seven's politics and secure his grandfather's legacy. As he stood before the council, the matriarch approached him, her expression one of approval. "You have done well, Kevin Andrews," she said. "Your grandfather would be proud." Kevin felt a wave of relief and accomplishment. He had faced immense challenges and emerged victorious, preserving the peace that had been so carefully crafted. Vaya and Erix joined him, their expressions a mix of relief and satisfaction. "You did it," Vaya said, offering a rare smile. "Thank you," Kevin replied. "I couldn't have done it without your help." As the council celebrated the restoration of peace, Kevin looked out at the alien city, feeling a sense of belonging he had never experienced before. He had embraced his role, faced the dangers, and found his place in this new world. With the balance restored and the future uncertain, Kevin knew one thing for sure. He was ready to face whatever came next.